Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by the Capital One Spark Cash Plus card. What can unlimited 2% cash back do for your business? Capital One, what's in your wallet? I'm Jamie Eisenberg, that's Dave Richard, that's Heath Cummings. We have the starts and sits that you need for week number 5. And of course, let's start with the start of the week. Big game coming once again for James Robinson. Was very disappointing last week. Only 2 PPR points as the Jaguars struggled against the Eagles. But now he gets the layup, and I'm taking the layup. Unbelievable matchup against the Texans. They allow the most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Listen to the list of running backs that have just dominated this team. Jonathan Taylor, 27 PPR points in week 1. Khalil Herbert, 30 PPR points in week 3. Austin Eckler, 34 PPR points in week 4. What does that set up for? Well, maybe a 40-point day for James Robinson, but it's really more about just what he's been this season so far. Just an unbelievable story, getting back on the field. Fantastic to see what he's doing, and I think he could be a top 10 running back this week. Heath, what are you doing, 24th? 24th against the Texans?
The only question I have is why did Travis Etienne get the same number of carries last week as James Robinson?
Because they were trailing.
They were getting crushed. They had to throw.
But then the rush attempts. He had the same number of rush attempts. Not the,
he played more snaps.
He only had 1 target, Travis Etienne, in the game. It was
I wonder if it was the surface. For a guy coming back from an injury too, just to make sure that nothing happened there. But the game script to me was all that mattered.
Lawrence gave the game away. The reason why neither of those
5
guys
turnovers.
had more work was that he had all those turnovers in the game. 4 fumbles. The weather stunk. Flush it. Forget about it. James Robinson goes off.
Yep, should be a big game for him. Change that ranking, sir. You want to have him closer to the
So you've
top
got
10.
Naheem Hines over James Robinson then.
Wow,
Ooh.
that's.
Ooh. How does that make you feel?
I have a lot of Naheem Hines, so I hope he's right. Other starts for me this week. Ryan Tannehill, I think, will have a big game against the Commanders because the Commanders are just not very good. J.K. Dobbins, we'll talk about him in a second. I like him. Dave doesn't. We'll differ on that one. I think we'll get a good game from Devin Singletary once again. Chris Olave, Terry McLaurin as well. Let's talk a little bit more about Ryan Tannehill here because obviously not necessarily the typical must-start quarterback. And we had this conversation on the podcast today about who we're starting, over the must-start guys. Really, it's just Matthew Stafford. I think that you'll start Tannehill over. But if you are looking for a sneaky DFS play this week, the Texans have been bad. They have allowed 10 touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks so far on the season. Again, as you see here, not a must-start quarterback here, but a guy that you could potentially use if you ever been frustrated trying to replace Dak Prescott, trying to replace Trey Lance. Ryan Tannehill could have a 3rd game this season of 20 or more fantasy points of the 5 that he's played. For Terry McLaurin, and this will lead into Heath starts as we transition there, but McLaurin's in a great opportunity here without Jahan Dotson on the field, taking on that same, this Titans defense on the other side that has really struggled against opposing wide receivers. And McLaurin hasn't exactly been awful. 3 games of 11 or more PPR points, had the disappointing game last week. But I think that had to do with the pressure that Carson Wentz has been under. This is not going to be the same type of defense that he's facing, so Wentz will have some time. McLaurin should be very good. And Heath, you also like another Washington receiver in the same game, and Curtis Samuel, as we show you your starts here that include Trevor Lawrence, both Patriots running backs, Curtis Samuel, and Tyler Conklin. So if you want to just piggyback there off of what we talked about with McLaurin, how good should Samuel be, and who do you like better?
Yeah, I like Samuel better. I think they both get a boost, but Samuel's had a higher target rate this season. He's averaging over 9 targets per game, and he gets carries in every game except for their most recent game. So I've got him plugged in for 10 targets in this game and 3 to 4 carries, and that type of situation puts you as a must-start fantasy wide receiver. I love the fact that he is their short area target because they can't protect Carson Wentz at all right now.
There's 2 things. Number 1, he didn't practice again on Thursday with the illness. Hopefully he gets back on the practice field by Friday so that he can play and make that star call look right. But also keep an eye on Brian Robinson for the Commanders. If he's back, that's the guy that they want to have running the football. And if they can run the football, that's more work for the running backs and especially for Robinson, less work for someone like Curtis Samuel.
I also think if there is no Samuel, Logan Thomas is definitely in play because he's already had about 6 targets per game, and that short area target like you're talking about, that's where Logan Thomas can come into play as well, along with J.D. McKissick and maybe Antonio Gibson if Robinson is on the field. So Trevor Lawrence, he's coming off his the first disappointing game. We just alluded to this with the 5 turnovers. Big bounce back potential here?
Yeah, I just don't care at all. He's playing against maybe the best defense in the NFL in maybe the worst weather game of the day, basically a monsoon. He needs to learn how to hold on to the ball when it's raining, but I don't expect that it's going to be raining in this game. If we get to forecast that it's going to be a monsoon, I will drop him. This is a bad Texans defense all the way across. He will have a highly efficient game. I still think he throws more than 30 passes. They've been pass heavy and they've been very fast. So there can be pass volume and rush volume in the same game.
As miserable as he was in his rookie season, only 3 games with 21 or more fantasy points. His best game was his first game in the NFL against the Texans, 25 fantasy points.
He had a lot of turnovers in that game,
He had
too.
3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in that game, but we'll take the 25. We don't worry about the turnovers when it comes to the fantasy production. My other choice for start of the week this week was both Patriots running backs. I'm glad you have both of them on this list. Tell me how confident you are in starting both, because it's easy to say I'm starting one or the other. Can you actually start both of them?
You can actually start both of them. I hope you're in a situation where you have better running backs than that. You have to choose between one of these guys. In that case, I would choose Harris in non-PPR. I'd choose Stevenson in full PPR. I wonder if Stevenson gets the bigger boost here, just because this Lions defense is so bad. He's often not able to score touchdowns because the Patriots go 5 yards at a time, and by the time they get inside the 5-yard line, it's Damian Harris time. He can score from the 20 against this Lions team. He can score from the 50 against this Lions team. I wouldn't be surprised if they have 30-plus rush attempts between the two of them and go over 200 yards rushing together.
I would start both of them over Ezekiel Elliott,
Yep.
both over James Conner, both
Yep.
over Najee Harris. I think it's a great situation for both of these guys to be successful. And if they are trailing by for whatever reason, that doesn't mean they're going to get away from the run. We've seen Harris now touchdown in 3 straight games in some weird situations. The Baltimore game, clearly one of them, with the backup third-string quarterback last week. Mac Jones may come back and solidify this offense, make it a little bit more sound. But that would help Stevenson if they are chasing points. He's got 4 catches each of the last 2 weeks. So love the setup for both of these guys. So great call there. All right, Dave, let's take a look at your starts here. And some interesting names on this list as well. Some fun names: Derek Carr, Jeff Wilson, Rashaad Penny, Kareem Hunt, and Gerald Everett. Let's talk about Derek Carr, because he typically does not play well at Kansas City, but you think this is going to be one of his better opportunities against the Chiefs.
I never tend to buy into location for matchups anymore, but you're right. He's only had 1 game with more than 20 fantasy points in Arrowhead, and there weren't a lot of fans there when it happened. So maybe there's something about the crowd being
there's a difference.
What do you mean?
About when that game happened. He's played 8 times in Arrowhead Stadium in his career.
Yeah.
You know what the other 7 were?
Well, yeah.
Late November, December, January.
So the weather.
The only other time that he was in the beginning part of the season in October was the game that he won. It was the victory lap game.
I
for the
know,
Buses.
but it wasn't a packed house. Remember, it was the COVID year.
It was a COVID year. There was nobody there, but it was the only time that it was in good weather in Arrowhead Stadium, and he lit up.
What's the forecast for this game, Jamie?
Not
Do
gonna
we
be
know
cold.
what it is? Look, I like the track record just generally against Kansas City. Obviously, most of those games were not in Kansas City, but Las Vegas should put up a lot of points in this game. He should have to throw. The over-under is 51 points. Kansas City's been great against the run. They haven't been as good against the pass. Every quarterback to play against Kansas City has put up at least 2 touchdowns. Carr could have 2, if not 3.
And you talk about he's only scored 20 against the Chiefs once in Arrowhead.
In Arrowhead.
Yeah. I mean, how many times has he scored 20 points this season? I haven't seen a difference from the Derek Carr that we saw the prior 2 years, and now he's got Devontae Adams, and he's still performing like the Derek Carr that he's always been. The touchdown rate's still below 4%. I just don't know that he's any different of a guy. If you don't have a better option, he's a high-end number 2 quarterback. I'm fine starting him. But I just don't know that he's any different than what he's
And
always
you
been.
like, I think, from our podcast earlier, you like Carson Wentz better than
I've
Derek
got
Carr.
them basically tied. Basically tied, yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm leaning more toward Dave here, just because I think we see this situation setting up how it is, and you mentioned it, Dave, the multiple touchdowns against this team. But Derek Carr has underperformed based on what the expectations for him this season. All right, let's talk about Rashaad Penny, assuming that he's healthy, coming off an unbelievable game against an unbelievably bad defense. You're all in. Sportsline's all in. Keith and I are a little bit out.
Well, all in being that he's ranked 22nd among running backs. He is a starter. It's a tough matchup, but you saw the upside last week. There's too much of it, and there aren't enough running backs with it for him to sit down. The Saints have allowed at least 80 total yards to a lead back in 3 of their 4 games, and if you make that number 74 yards, it's all 4 games. And week 4 was the first time the Seahawks gave Rashaad Penny 15 touches, and look what he did with it. You think that's going to play a little bit in Pete Carroll's mind?
15
hey,
carries.
I want to run the
He had
ball.
15 carries, 15 touches in week 1.
Okay, so 15 carries, it's fine. I'll take either way. He's going to get those numbers again this week. I think the Seahawks want him to do it. It's not to hide Geno Smith. He's playing great too. But now I bet Pete Carroll feels like he's got a full functional offense where he doesn't have to worry about making plays late in the 4th quarter. I think Rashaad Penny's going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to tell with guys like this where he's had 3 pretty miserable games and 1 spectacular
Against
game
a
a terrible defense.
Right.
So I'm just a little bit skeptical. If he does that against the Saints, he does half that against the Saints, then I'll be all in as a starting option on all season long, or at least as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, I'm leaning more toward the way you're coming at it, Heath, just because what was the difference between the first 3 weeks of the season and week 4? It was the defense that he played. And so can he do this against a tougher opponent that's going to make things a little bit harder on him, that has the opportunity, I think, to take away the run like we've seen for the majority of the time the Saints has played defense. It's hard to bench Penny, clearly, because you see what the upside is, but again, there's a sample size of 3 versus 1, and the 1 being the Detroit Lions. Let's talk about Kareem Hunt, Dave, because he's been very up and down, had a great week 1, has been disappointing for the last 3 weeks. Is this going to be a game where he breaks through against the Chargers, knowing that Nick Chubb is healthy and still dominating work?
I mean, I almost feel like it's touchdowns that are going to matter with Kareem Hunt, but I love this. I love this matchup for the Browns. The Chargers have allowed the most yards per carry in the league over 6 yards per carry to running backs. They're bottom 3 in yards before and after contact allowed. So I think the Browns are going to run a ton on them. The Chargers have given up at least 14 PPR points to each of Dameon Pierce and Rex Burkhead last week. It was 10 PPR points to James Robinson and Travis Etienne the week before. They are going in the absolute wrong direction when it comes to run defense, and I think the Browns take advantage. I want to have that potential with Kareem Hunt. I would chance it with him this week over Najee, over James Conner, over Ezekiel Elliott. Basically the way you guys feel about the Patriots running backs, I'm going to say I feel that way about the Browns running backs. Obviously we all feel that way about Nick Chubb. I feel that way about Kareem Hunt too.
All right, hopefully this is it. I think you're 100% right. If he scores, he'll be great. If he doesn't score, you get about 7 or 8 fantasy points, and just have to understand that that's who Kareem Hunt has been for the start of the season.